In this particular discussion, we are going to try to make several additions to our original text, which we think will convey some new dimensions of meaning to our basic problem. In the first place, as we all realize, ancient philosophy and science derived a great deal of symbolical knowledge and insight from the study of the human body. In the function of the body itself, man was presented with an immediate and intimate mystery. And for the most part, this mystery has not been solved, even with our increasing scientific knowledge. We are able to examine the body in greater detail than ever before. We are able to understand its functions more accurately than was ever possible to ancient man. Yet the essential mysteries of the body remain, and we are still searching for those major keys by which perhaps not only can we solve bodily mysteries, but by the knowledge thus gained extend ourselves into universal mysteries. For it was long held that if we could ever understand man, we would have a key to all things that exist, inasmuch as man is bound to all other things, is derived from all other things, and in the course and extent of his existence, he moves through all states and conditions, and finds available within himself all instruments necessary for his continuing existence, growth, and unfoldment through all the states of nature, both physical and metaphysical. Realizing to some measure, therefore, the thoughtfulness that man dedicated to this mystery of the body, we can also be aware of the natural and inevitable functioning of the human mind. Man, searching for answers, uses a kind of symbolic methodology. Having discovered some small law operating somewhere, he seeks to extend it as a greater law operating elsewhere or everywhere. Thus our concepts of cosmogony, our studies of things not visible to our sensory perceptions, these involve a process of analogy by which we apply things seen to things unseen, principles recognized to principles sought for in the unfoldment of universal life. The Kabbalists conceived of man, therefore, as the little universe, and the universe as the grand man, attempting to indicate that the processes operating in the human body operate in a larger scale in space, and that all space can be traced in the mysteries of man himself. This concept not only dominated the thinking of early Western mysticism, but is part of our spiritual heritage from Asia. For the same contemplations have everywhere existed, and all our religions, philosophies, and sciences were originally influenced by these concepts of analogy. But in many instances, these older analogies were correct, we now know. Other discoveries of antiquity remain uncertain to us. They may be right, they may not be right. In some few things, we believe that we have corrected the errors of the past, that certain mistakes were made, but we are not too sure that our corrections are correct, and we may still have to go further. And the tendency of this further consideration has been to bring us back to the most original and ancient findings. Thus there seems to be in man a faculty of truth perception, of truth realization, and that which man can actually reason out, prove to be reasonable. Later generations will probably prove to be factual. For reason is an instrument of fact-finding, just as surely as any technical instrument or mechanical device of the modern laboratory. It is natural that the spine, which is a sort of column supporting the entire structure of the human body, that the spine should be early considered, that a great deal of symbolism should arise in connection with it, and that ancient man, studying the human body, should recognize that in this spinal column was a very vital and important element of man's corporeal nature. That in mysterious way this spinal column was a kind of magic wand, a rod, a staff, upon which the body was required or naturally inclined to lean. It was also that by means of which man's upright posture was assured. And it was interesting to recognize that this tall column of bones should support upon its upper end the mystery of the skull, that part of man which seemed to be like a heavenly globe standing upon the height of a column in a strange wilderness of physical tissue and structure. Therefore, the spine as the supporting instrument, uniting the various sections of the body, seemed to bring into some common pattern the three principal parts of the human torso, so that the body itself, with the exception of its extremities, was, so to say, held together or brought into a pattern or harmony by means of this monumental structure of bones, flexible, magnificent in its formation, serpent-like in its flexibility, and yet withal a firm and enduring support, capable of sustaining the various processes of the body with wonderful exactness, precision, and reasonable comfort. It was interesting to these ancient people that this spinal mystery seemed to bring into harmony the three principal parts of the human torso, namely the cranial, or the contents of the skull, the thoracic, or the contents of the chest, and the abdominal, or the contents of the abdominal cavity. These three cavities, so to say, filled with their vital organs and absolutely necessary to the function and consistent development of man, were anciently associated with cosmogony. And Dr. Robert Flood, the famous Rosicrucian mystic of the early 17th century, believed that he found in the structure of the body and its internal organization the source of Dante's mysterious worlds as set forth in the Divine Comedy. We know definitely that this analogy can be extended to many of the Hindu sacred writings, in which the worlds are beautifully arranged and organized in a pattern very close to that of this division of man's principal parts of his body. Thus we have the abdominal cavity, with the long, mysterious, and involved structure of the intestinal part. And in this we see the symbol of the underworld, the mysterious sphere of Hades, of the ancient Greeks and Latins, a mysterious dark universe in which processes are constantly taking place, which are essential to man, but processes that have been very carefully and cunningly concealed by nature. We also recognize in the thoracic cavity what might be called the middle region. And in this middle region, the heart seems to reign supreme over the mystery of life. And far above, supported upon the slender column of the neck, we find the skull with its contents, the wonders of the brain, and of this mysterious upper world. And we find in Hindu philosophy that the spinal cord seems to be essentially the Ganges River, which arises in the head of Shiva, arising in the brain, arising in the midst of all those convolutions which are called the caves of Ganga, where the rishi or the holy men sit in eternal meditation, being symbolical of the brain processes and functions. And that this river then flows downward like a river of life, and that this river becomes a distributor of nerve impulse and nerve instinct to all parts of the body, keeping it alive, so that this spine with its brain above seems to resemble an inverted plant, a kind of bulb with its growth descending from the brain and extending throughout the body. And this extension through the body, through an infinite diversity of nerve structure, seems to resemble a beautiful inverted fern-like plant with its root in heaven and its growth descending downward into earth and even into the underworld. The ancients furthermore recognized in this spinal column with its content a kind of ladder, the kind of ladder upon which Jacob saw the angels ascending and descending. The number of its original segments, counting those that are now more or less brought together and ossified together, would be 33, which is indeed the number of years that David ruled in Jerusalem, the years of the life of Christ, and a number that has been sacred for a long time among the secret societies of Europe and America. This number 33 is a fabulous number in symbolism, and there seems to be no reason to doubt that its original significance was related to the study of the spine, for that in some way the spine became a symbolic equivalent of this number, and the principles and energies associated with the number likewise cannot be denied. In Egypt, under the name of the tape column, or the mysterious symbol of the pole or axis of things, the spine was also highly venerated. It was held that it was like a column, the roots of which were in the underworld, and the upper part extending higher to carry upon its upper end the celestial globe, the globe of the brain. And to more or less to carry on this symbol, we note that early anatomists have made constant use of the old symbolism in naming various parts of the body, and also, to a degree, various parts of the brain and spinal system. We know that they have called, for instance, the upper vertebra of the spine the Atlas, and it is this Atlas, the giant of Greek mythology, who carries the heavens upon his shoulders. This heaven world being in truth representative of the cranial sphere. Thus the ancients divided man as they divided nature into heaven, earth, and hell, into three great parts: a superior universe above, represented by the brain; an inferior universe below, represented by the abdominal cavity; and between these two, the world of mortals, or the human world, in the midst of which, upon the mighty mountain of the diaphragm, was the temple of the heart. All of these symbols we find in the Eddas and sagas of Scandinavia, in the Kalevala of Finland, in the Buddhist mysticism of China and Japan. We find it in the Greek and the Egyptian. We find it in the Brahmanic and Hindu mysteries of the world mountain.